My name is Emily Carter, and this is the story I never thought I would share with anyone, let alone the world. If you've ever been betrayed by the very people who are supposed to love you unconditionally, you'll understand my pain. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. It began with one simple text message. I typed into the family group chat. Flight lands at 3 p.m. Can someone pick me up? At that moment, I was sitting on a plane thousands of feet in the air, exhausted, numb, and hollow. Just 3 days earlier, I had buried my husband overseas. He was a soldier, my partner in life, my best friend, and now he was gone. The funeral had been small, quiet, in a military cemetery far from home. Because of the cost, the distance, and the short notice, none of my family had come. Not one. But I wasn't angry with them then. I just told myself, maybe they couldn't. Maybe they had their reasons. Now I was heading home for Christmas, the first one I'd spend alone as a widow. I thought, naively perhaps, that at least my family would welcome me with open arms. A ride from the airport wasn't too much to ask, right? The notification buzzed a few minutes later. It was from my brother, Ryan. His words cut through me sharper than any knife. We're busy. Try Uber. I stared at the message in disbelief. Busy? He had 2 kids, a wife, and lived 30 minutes away. I wasn't asking him to move mountains. I was asking him to meet me, just once, in my grief. Before I could even type a response, another bubble popped up. This time from my mom. Why didn't you plan better? Plan better? My husband's death wasn't part of any plan. His sudden deployment overseas. The phone call. The folded flag. The unbearable silence when I came home to our empty apartment. How exactly was I supposed to plan better for that? My eyes blurred with tears. My fingers shook as I typed back just 2 words. No worries. And then I set my phone down. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Something inside me just broke. Something I hadn't even realized was still holding on after everything I'd been through. The rest of the flight felt like a dream, or maybe a nightmare. People around me were laughing, talking, holding hands, sipping their sodas while I sat frozen against the window, staring at the endless sky. My mind repeated those messages over and over. Try Uber. Why didn't you plan better? By the time the plane landed, a strange calmness had washed over me. I felt invisible, abandoned, discarded by the people I had once called family. When I stepped off the plane and into the bustling chaos of the airport, families were hugging each other tightly, holding signs that said, "Welcome home," or "Merry Christmas." Balloons, flowers, smiles. Everywhere I looked, someone had someone. Except me. I dragged my suitcase through the terminal, my heart heavy. I kept thinking, what did I do to deserve this? Why am I so unworthy of love and kindness from my own blood? When I reached the exit doors, the cold December air hit me like a slap. I pulled my coat tighter, still waiting for my phone to buzz. Maybe my mom would change her mind. Maybe Ryan would realize how cruel he'd been. But the screen stayed dark. So I hailed a cab. Not even an Uber, because somehow, in that moment, even that felt too modern, too detached. I needed something raw. Something that matched the hollow ache in my chest. The driver was kind. He saw my tears in the rear-view mirror, but didn't ask questions. He just played soft Christmas music on the radio, the kind that usually brings joy, but, to me, felt like a cruel reminder of what I had lost. As the city lights blurred past, I thought about my husband, about the way he used to tell me, "Emily, no matter what, you're stronger than you think." I thought about how proud he looked in his uniform, and how unfair it was that he gave his life for a country that barely remembered the spouses left behind. And then I thought about my family, the people who were supposed to catch me when I fell, but instead had pushed me further into the abyss. That night, when I finally unlocked the door to my apartment, I didn't feel relief at being home. I felt nothing. A hollow emptiness, deeper than grief, deeper than loneliness. And that's when the idea first entered my mind. The idea that would shock my family. The idea that would make them regret the words they had thrown at me so carelessly. because what they saw on the news that night changed everything. The night after I came home from the airport was the longest night of my life. I sat in the living room of my small apartment, surrounded by boxes that still held my husband's belongings. His boots were by the door, the ones he wore on his last trip home. His jacket hung on the coat rack, untouched, as if he might walk in at any moment and grab it. His mug, the one with the chipped handle, sat on the counter. I couldn't bring myself to move any of it. The Christmas tree I had bought weeks before stood in the corner, still in its box, unopened. We were supposed to decorate it together when he came back from overseas. Instead, it just sat there, mocking me with all the things we would never get to do. I curled up on the couch and tried to sleep, but the silence was unbearable. Every sound seemed amplified: the hum of the refrigerator, the faint ticking of the clock, the distant sound of traffic outside. I wanted to scream, to break something, but I just lay there staring at the ceiling. By morning, my phone was still silent. No apologies, no check-ins, not even a "did you make it home safely?" from my family. Nothing. That's when the weight of everything truly hit me. My husband was gone, my family didn't care, and I had no one. The grief was suffocating. But underneath the grief, something else was growing, a quiet, simmering anger. I picked up my phone and scrolled back through the group chat. The words glared at me. "We're busy. Try Uber. Why didn't you plan better?" I wanted to type back, to unleash all the rage I felt, to tell them how heartless they were, to remind them that while they were decorating Christmas trees and drinking hot cocoa, I was burying the love of my life in a foreign country. But I didn't type anything. I didn't beg for their sympathy. I didn't demand their love. Instead, I decided something else. If my family wouldn't see my worth, the world would. I turned on the TV to drown out my thoughts, flipping through the channels until I landed on the local news. They were covering holiday stories, families reuniting, charities giving away gifts, soldiers surprising loved ones. Each one was bittersweet for me, but it also sparked something inside me. I had a story, too, one that needed to be told, one that would expose the coldness of my family's rejection and maybe, just maybe, make them realize what they had done. That morning, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote everything down. The text messages, the funeral, the loneliness, the way my family turned their backs on me when I needed them most. And then I sent it to a journalist I knew from years ago. Back when I was in college, I had interned at a local newspaper, and one of the reporters, Claire Donovan, had always told me, "Emily, your voice matters. People will listen if you're brave enough to speak." So I emailed her. I didn't expect her to reply right away. It was the holiday season after all, but within an hour, my phone buzzed. "Emily," she wrote, "I'm so sorry for your loss. Would you be willing to share your story on camera? I think people need to hear this." At first, I hesitated. Did I really want to air my family's cruelty to the world? Did I want strangers to know how abandoned I felt? But then I remembered the sting of those text messages, the coldness of my mom's words, the complete silence that followed. Yes, I wanted people to know. That afternoon, Claire and a cameraman came to my apartment. I sat on the couch, clutching my husband's folded flag in my lap, and told them everything. My voice shook at times, tears spilled down my cheeks, but I didn't stop. I told them about his service, his sacrifice, and how, after laying him to rest, I came home to a family who couldn't even bother to pick me up from the airport. Claire squeezed my hand when we were done. "You're stronger than you think, Emily. This will touch people's hearts." That night, when the news aired my interview, I didn't know what to expect. Maybe a few people would watch, maybe no one. But within minutes, my phone exploded with notifications. Strangers were reaching out, sending messages of love, support, and compassion. People were outraged on my behalf. Comments flooded in. "Emily, you are not alone. Your husband is a hero, and so are you. Family doesn't always mean blood." I cried reading those messages, not because they erased the pain, but because for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel completely invisible. And then, something happened that I will never forget. My family saw the news, and suddenly they were calling. The first phone call came from my brother. My screen lit up with his name, and for a moment, I just stared at it, my hand frozen. Part of me wanted to answer, part of me wanted to let it ring and go to voicemail forever. In the end, curiosity won. I swiped. Emily, his voice came through, urgent, almost frantic. What the hell was that? Why would you put our family on TV like that? I laughed, bitter and hollow.
Why?
Because you told me to take an Uber home from the airport after I buried my husband overseas. Because Mom told me I should have planned better. Do you have any idea how that felt? He was quiet for a second, then sighed. Look, we were busy that day. You could have figured it out. But now you've made us look like monsters to the whole world. I clenched the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. Maybe you should have thought about that before you treated me like garbage. The truth hurts, doesn't it? He muttered something about me being dramatic and hung up. Not 5 minutes later, Mom called. Her voice was colder, sharper. Emily Jean Carter, what have you done? Do you realize how embarrassed we are? People from church are calling me, saying they saw your interview. Do you know how humiliating this is for us? Humiliating for you? My voice shook, not from fear but from a storm of emotions I had kept bottled up for years. Do you know what humiliation feels like, Mom? It's standing at an airport, dragging your own suitcase after burying your husband, because your family was too busy to care. It's opening your phone to those cruel messages and realizing the people who are supposed to love you the most don't give a damn. She snapped back. We didn't mean it like that. You should have been more understanding. Everyone has their own lives. That was it. That was the moment something inside me snapped. Everyone has their own lives? I just lost mine, Mom. My whole world was buried 6 feet under while you were decorating a Christmas tree. And you couldn't even pick me up from the airport. Do you hear yourself? Her voice faltered, softer now, but still defensive. You didn't have to make it public. Oh, I did, I said firmly. Because if I hadn't, you'd still be acting like nothing happened. Now the whole world knows who you really are. I hung up before she could respond. The calls kept coming, my sister, my cousins, even an uncle I hadn't spoken to in years. Some tried to guilt me, others tried to defend themselves, and a few just wanted the drama to go away. But through it all, one truth became clear. They weren't sorry for what they had done. They were only sorry people found out. The next day, when I went to the grocery store, people I didn't even know stopped me. A woman in the frozen foods aisle hugged me and whispered, "You're braver than you think." I lost my husband too. Your story gave me strength. An older man at the checkout counter saluted me and said, "Your husband was a hero. So are you." It was overwhelming, in a good way. For once, I felt seen. But the support from strangers only seemed to fuel my family's anger. They sent texts in the group chat, demanding that I issue a clarification on the news, that I apologize for making them look bad. I refused. That night, I posted something on my social media accounts, something I had never dared to say out loud before. Family is not always blood. Family is love, kindness, and showing up when it matters. I may have lost my husband, but I've gained the support of thousands of people who understand what compassion means. And that's more family than I've ever had. The post went viral. Hundreds of comments, thousands of shares. Strangers sent me flowers, cards, even meals to my doorstep. And my family? They grew quieter in the chat. Fewer calls, fewer angry messages. Almost as if they realized the tide of public opinion was against them. But their silence didn't bring me peace. It brought me clarity. For the first time in my life, I began to question everything. Why I had always been the one to bend, to compromise, to beg for scraps of their affection. Why I had spent years trying to earn their love, when love should never be earned. The conflict wasn't just with my family anymore. It was inside me. Part of me wanted to cut them off completely, to erase their numbers, block their calls, and never look back. Another part of me still craved their acceptance, the daughter in me still yearning for her mother's love, no matter how twisted or conditional it was. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about choosing the kind of life I wanted to live moving forward. A life chained to people who only cared when others were watching, or a life built on my own terms, surrounded by the people who truly valued me. That choice, I realized, would define everything that came next. And little did I know, the world wasn't done watching. The story was about to explode in ways none of us could have imagined. The Betrayal explosion came on a cold Friday evening when I least expected it. I was curled up on the couch, wrapped in my husband's old army blanket, watching the news in the background while sipping tea. Then the anchor's voice caught my attention. Tonight, we continue our coverage of Emily Carter, the widow whose heartbreaking story has captured national attention. But now, new details have emerged. Her family has issued a statement. My heart dropped. The camera cut to a reporter standing outside my parents' home. Yes, their home. The same white house with the picket fence where I had grown up. Behind him, the porch light glowed, and I could see silhouettes through the curtains. My stomach twisted. The reporter read, "The Carter family says they're being unfairly portrayed. They claim Emily has always been dramatic and that she is using the loss of her husband to seek attention. They emphasize that she was not abandoned, but simply misunderstood the situation." I froze. My own flesh and blood had gone on record to discredit me, to paint me as unstable, needy, and manipulative. The betrayal burned deeper than any rejection before. This wasn't just private cruelty anymore. This was war. Within minutes, my phone exploded with messages. Strangers, friends, even fellow military spouses sent their outrage. "How could they say that about you? We're with you, Emily. You don't deserve this." But among the support, one message stood out. It was from a lawyer, someone I had never met. He wrote, "Emily, you need to know something. I represented your husband in some paperwork before he deployed. There are details in his will that your family might not have told you about. Please call me." My hands shook as I dialed his number. He answered immediately. "Emily, first let me say I'm so sorry for your loss. Your husband was a good man. He trusted me with his estate planning before he went overseas. Did anyone from your family ever talk to you about his will?"
No, y whispered.
"They said he didn't really leave much behind." The lawyer sighed. "That's not true. He left a substantial life insurance policy. But here's the thing, it names you as the sole beneficiary. From what I can see, your parents may have been expecting something different. It seems they believed they had a claim." It hit me like a thunderclap. The coldness, the rejection, the venom in their public statement. Suddenly, it all made sense. They hadn't turned their backs on me just because they were heartless. They had turned their backs because of money. I felt sick. "You're telling me," I whispered, "that my parents cut me off because I'm the one who inherited?" "Emily," the lawyer said gently, "I can't speak to their motives. But I can say with certainty, they knew about the policy. They knew it was yours." I dropped the phone, tears stinging my eyes. The room spun. My husband had left me his final act of love, making sure I was taken care of after he was gone. And my family, the people who should have protected me, comforted me, had seen that love as an obstacle. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat awake, staring at the shadows on the wall, replaying every interaction, every cold word, every text message. The next morning, I made a decision. If they wanted war, I would give it to them. But not with screaming, not with anger. No, I would use the one thing they had never expected me to have, my voice. I called a reporter who had covered my story first. I told him I was ready to go on camera again. That evening, I sat under the hot studio lights, my heart pounding, my hands folded tightly in my lap. And when the camera rolled, I told the truth. I spoke about burying my husband, about begging my family for 1 ounce of compassion and being told to plan better, about dragging my suitcase through the airport, my heart in pieces. And then, with my voice shaking but steady, I revealed the will. "My husband made sure I would be okay," I said, looking straight into the camera. "And instead of standing by me, my family resented me for it. That's the truth they didn't want you to know." The studio was silent when I finished. The reporter's eyes were glassy. And when the segment aired that night, the world erupted. Social media exploded with outrage. Hashtag Stand with Emily trended within hours. People shared my story across every platform. And my family? They had nowhere to hide. Their attempt to shame me had backfired spectacularly. Instead of turning people against me, it had revealed their greed, their cruelty, and their betrayal. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one left small and voiceless. I was the one with power. And as the cameras shut off, I realized something profound. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about freedom. The morning after my televised interview, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the curtains and my phone buzzing nonstop. Normally, that constant vibration would have sent a pit of anxiety into my stomach. But this time it felt different. This time, I wasn't scared. When I picked up my phone, I saw thousands of notifications, messages from strangers, comments from military spouses, and even notes from other widows who had walked this same lonely road. They weren't just offering sympathy, they were standing with me. "You spoke for all of us," one message read. "You turned pain into power," another said. And then I saw it, an email from a Veterans Foundation. They wanted to honor my husband with a special ceremony and establish a scholarship fund in his name. My throat tightened as I read the words. For the first time since his death, I felt like his legacy was alive, not just fading in the past. But while the world lifted me up, my family's silence grew louder. No calls.
No texts.
Not even an attempt to explain or defend themselves further. It was as if they had retreated into the shadows, too ashamed to face the fallout. Part of me still longed for an apology, a scrap of humanity. But deep down, I knew better. One afternoon, a letter arrived in the mail. The return address made my stomach flip. It was from my parents' lawyer. With trembling hands, I opened it. The letter was cold, transactional, and to the point. It stated that my family intended to pursue a claim against my husband's estate, arguing that I was manipulating the public and unfit to handle the funds. I let out a hollow laugh. Of course. Even now, even after the world saw the truth, they couldn't let go. I brought the letter to my husband's lawyer, the one who had first contacted me. He read it, sighed, and looked me straight in the eyes. "Emily, they don't have a case. Your husband was clear. Everything was left to you. This is nothing but intimidation." "Then let them try," I said, surprising even myself with the strength in my voice. The weeks that followed felt surreal. While my family whispered in the shadows, the rest of the world embraced me. Donations poured into the scholarship fund. Local businesses offered their support. Strangers became friends. And slowly, something shifted inside me. For years, I had defined myself by the love I never received from my family, always chasing approval, always bending myself to fit into their cold expectations. But now I realized the truth. Love wasn't something you earned. Love wasn't conditional. Love was what my husband gave me freely, without question. Love was what I was now receiving from strangers who had no reason to stand by me except kindness. It was liberating. The final nail in the coffin of my old life came on Christmas Eve. I sat alone in my small apartment, candles lit, my husband's photo framed on the mantel. I expected the night to feel hollow, but instead, it felt peaceful. Then my phone buzzed again. It was a video call request from a woman I'd never met before. Curious, I answered. On the screen appeared a group of widows and military families gathered around a decorated tree. They had found each other through my story, connecting online, forming a kind of family I had never known. "Emily," one woman said, smiling warmly, "we wanted you to know, you're not alone tonight. Merry Christmas." Tears spilled down my cheeks. For the first time in so long, they weren't tears of grief, but of gratitude. That night, I made a choice. I blocked my family's numbers, deleted the group chat that had once been my lifeline. And in doing so, I cut the final chain holding me to their toxic grip. They had tried to break me. They had tried to erase me. But instead, they revealed their own emptiness. And in the process, gave me the chance to rebuild myself. As the clock struck midnight, I whispered into the quiet room. "To my husband, my love, my protector, thank you. You gave me strength even in death. And to my new family, wherever you are, thank you for showing me what love really means. The road ahead would not be easy. Grief doesn't vanish overnight. Betrayal doesn't stop hurting just because you choose to move on. But I knew now, without a shadow of doubt, that I had the power to create something new. I was no longer the woman begging for a ride home, no longer the daughter dismissed as dramatic. I was Emily Carter, the widow who refused to be silenced, who turned her pain into a voice for others, who chose love over blood, truth over lies, and freedom over chains. And that was the best revenge of all. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more powerful stories, and ring the bell so you never miss an upload from Revenge Files.